Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Rangers Review morning briefing for Tuesday, the 25th of April. I'm Derek Clark, and I'm joined by a full-strength squad this morning. First of all, Jonny McFarlane. How are we doing, Jonny?
Great, Derek. Lovely to see you and Stevie's lovely shiny napper. It's great to be here in this lovely Glasgow morning, so I'm looking forward to it.
Stevie Clifford also joins us, smiling away down there. How are we doing, Stevie?
I'm good, mate. I'm just laughing at Johnny's patter. It is just like his love for Ben Davis, very substandard. So looking forward to the show this morning. At least he can pass, though, Derek.
Johnny's talking away. He needs to put his mic on first. Go fire ahead.
I've changed my mind a little bit on that, Stevie. You might be surprised to hear. You did warn us. No, listen, I'll defend them till the hill.
Right, let's talk. Well, before we talk Rangers, folks, you can see the ticker below. If you want to take advantage of that tremendous offer on the website, it ends on, I believe, midnight on the 27th, Jonny? Is that, am I right in thinking that? The 50 pence for 2 months offer. Not only that, you can also be in with a chance of winning a personalised tour for four for Ibrox with a club legend as well. It really is a fantastic deal. Head over to rangersreview.co.uk/subscribe for all the details. Quick word to our podcast sponsors, Seneca Hair Restoration. These are the top dogs in the hair transplant biz. If you're looking for a Kamar Roof or a Chris Boyd or something similar, perhaps a Dick Advocat for the older bears, then these are the guys to go to. And as ever, I've popped in the all-important links in the description box as well. Right, folks, let's talk Rangers. Bit of transfer news last night. Jack Butland, the on loan Manchester United goalkeeper, he's the Crystal Palace goalie. His deal expires in the summer. Rangers poised to clinch a deal to sign him for the start of next season. He is 38 years old. He's not played, of course, for Man United, but he is on loan as a backup goalkeeper there. He had played for a number of years at Stoke City. I actually watched him quite a fair few times when I covered Stoke City back in the day. And it now looks like he's set to clinch a move to Ibrox. Thoughts, lads? Jonny, first of all, I think a goalkeeper is an area of the pitch that Rangers do need to strengthen. Of that, there is no doubt. I think Jack Butland comes with a decent pedigree. No transfer fee, of course. I'm not too opposed to this move should it occur.
Well, Derek, you're the first one to probably tell us what Jack Butland's like, because if you covered Stoke while he was there, you're probably the man who's seen more of him than any of us. I've obviously seen him play. He's got 9 caps for England, but I can't say that I've sat and studied his game. I mean, what sort of a keeper is he?
To begin with, he was pretty impressive for me. Good goalkeeper, good safe pair of hands. Then he had a sort of crisis in confidence. He would let in a few clangers. I think it was at the time when Mark Hughes was heading out at Stoke City, and then they had I think Paul Lambert came in, if I'm not mistaken, and he just never quite happened for him since from then on. Of course, he joined Palace in 2020, played a handful of times for them. I never watched him when he was at Palace, but Stoke, listen, he was a good goalkeeper when he was coming through the ranks as a young lad. There was talks of big money moves at the time. And going to bigger and better things, but never quite materialised. I know he's at Man United just now, but as a backup. But there was a lot of potential there at the time, and I think it's very similar. You could say to Todd Cantwell, although they differ in age. He has perhaps lost his way a little bit. A move north to Rangers may reinvigorate him. Stevie, your thoughts on Jack Butland?
Yeah, look, quite positive about it, Derek. Jonny will be able to say this as well. We spoke about Jack Butland about a month ago. These rumours and these stories about Jack Butland have been going on for quite a long time. So, excuse me, I'm not really surprised that the links have maybe become a bit more formalised. But Rangers are going to have to do smart business in the summer, Derek. There's going to be a possibility that as many as a dozen might go out. So we're going to have to facilitate, anywhere between 8 and 10 players coming in. I expect that will be in the region of where our business will be So to do that, you can't sign every player for £3-4 million. We don't have the ability to do that. There's going to be some smart signings need to be made. Now, Jack Butland, if we were going for him normally, you'd be looking at spending £3-4 million on a guy like that. He's 30 years old. He's got a very good pedigree. And I think that he's kind of lost his way a wee bit. I think that's fair. But he needs a challenge again. He needs that that pressure of being number one. He needs maybe that challenge for him personally again. And we can provide that for him. Now, it's very similar, and we don't like to talk about it, but it's very similar to Joe Hart. Joe Hart was the exact same. You know, people talk about clangers from Joe Hart and things before he came here. I've not seen him make that many since he's been here. So, you know, Jack Butland is very much in that mould for me. He's going to be somebody that Michael Beale knows very well. And I think it's a smart signing. I think it's a smart start to where we need to be, which is, you know, a number one was priority. I'll stick to what I said before. I really think that the way it'll go is that McCrory will get the last 5 games after the split, and then you'll see him being bumped up to second. And most likely, John McLaughlin and Alan McGregor will leave in the summer. So there's going to be change there. Jack Butland, for me, he's got the stature. He's a big lad, and he should, you know, he'll need a wee run of games, Derek, to get his confidence back and stuff like that. But Rangers is an excellent opportunity for him, as much as it's an excellent opportunity for us, for him to prove his credentials and prove that he's got that hunger again to be number one somewhere. So I'm really pleased at the possibility of it. It's never, you know, it's never done until Michael Beale's announced it and he's holding the scarf up or whatever. So, but we all know that the goalkeeping position, Jonny, we spoke about these stats before we come here. So if you want to ruin everybody's morning by telling them just how bad they are, then fire on. But when Jonny talks about these stats, I think it's obvious that the goalkeeper is very much a priority. And to be honest, lads, if we're really, really honest, it maybe should have been done a year or two before now, but it is what it is.
Yeah, I think there's no doubt, Stevie, the decisions made in the summer have been the wrong ones. Alan McGregor clearly shouldn't have been given a new deal, or if he was given a new deal, it should have been as a number 2 with a new goalkeeper coming in. And these stats that I'm about to give you from StatsBomb, which is the premier stats organisation that you can get. So there's no doubt about these and this data here. This is a data set that's used by Liverpool, Manchester United, clubs of that stature. So there's a stat called goals saved above average, and it measures the expected goals of shots and what goes in and what doesn't go in, so you can get an overall sense of how good a goalkeeper is across the whole season. Now, Josh would be quick to point out that there is some context required, because you can be 5-0 up and lose a goal to a shot that has got low XG because it's been pinged from 35 yards into the top corner, and that would affect your goals saved above average. So, you know, you've got to think about it broad strokes, big picture. But of all the keepers in the league, Alan McGregor is by significant margin the worst, and his goals saved above average figure is negative 8.26. That means, based on the data, Alan McGregor's let in 8 goals more than he should have. So he'd been expected to save an extra 8 goals. To contrast that with our great rivals, Joe Hart has conceded 0.41 negative goals. So he's 8 goals better off than Alan McGregor. It gets worse because Rangers also have another goalkeeper who is in the negative for goals saved above average, John McLaughlin, negative 3.72. So if you add the negative 3.72 to negative 8.26, between the two keepers that Rangers have, 12 goals more than they should have been conceded by Ibrox goalkeepers this year in the league. Now, that is a lot. That is a serious amount. We can go further by having a look at a keeper who is in the complete opposite. So for Aberdeen, Kel Roos, I think we all saw that he's a player of some repute. A couple of very, very good saves for Aberdeen. His goal saved above average is positive 8.64. So the difference in the goalkeeping between Aberdeen and Rangers this season is 20 goals. That's quite remarkable based on the stats. So there's no doubt to me in my mind that this is an issue that absolutely 100% needs solved. Rangers will have this data. They'll know it themselves. There's obviously the eye test that goes with it. I don't think eye test Alan McGregor has been terrible. But in terms of the data that's underlying his performance, it's really, really not good. There's also another one here I think is worth touching on, which is save percentage. So it's the percentage of on-target shots that are saved by the goalkeeper. Alan McGregor's is at 61%. That means 39% of the league shots taken against Alan McGregor fly into the net. Again, and I'm only bringing up Joe Hart because Celtic are our direct rivals, and Rangers have to be better than Celtic in key metrics. And one of them is obviously a goalkeeper. You look back at successful Rangers titles in the past, and often the goalkeeper has been one of the key personalities. Think of Andy Gorham, Stefan Kloss, Alan McGregor himself. Joe Hart's percentage for that is 74%, so 26% shots are going in. There's quite a big difference between 39 and 26. So again, that tells you a story about why Rangers need to go out and they need to strengthen, and need to strengthen in a major way. Yeah,
and listen, but those stats are glaring and tells you where Rangers' problems lie. I think it doesn't help when you've had several different centre-back pairings as well this season. Of course, injuries have ravaged the Rangers squad, but those numbers tell you a story that Rangers do need to strengthen in the goalkeeping department. Let's get to a few of the comments coming. First of all, we had a couple of super chat donations yesterday. John Adams has donated $1.99. So thank you very much, John. That is very kind. This certainly helps us do what we do and talk all things Rangers here at the channel. The Blue Yonder says, if Butland signs, then McCrory must be promoted to number 2 and get games in the cups. Like you, Stevie, I agree. After Sunday, get McCrory in if he's fit and let him play the remaining league games. It's nothing riding on them. It'll be interesting to see if he can take over and be promoted from effectively a number 3 at this moment in time. But as a number 2, I would certainly keep McCrory around. What do you make of this point that's been uttered by this guy here?
I'll agree with it. It's Butland, though. Let's not have another Morelos and Morelos situation and all these names that
we just noticed that.
Let's make sure we don't go down that route. But listen, that
Stevie, we want to nip that in the butt.
Yeah. Let's make sure that we get that right. Absolutely. But look, listen, that's what I expect to happen, Derek. Yeah, I mean, I think that Robbie McCrory will. We've got to think about as well. The potential for turnover is quite high. We need a Scottish quota. There has to be 4 homegrown Scottish players in our squad. There has to be 8 overall. So on top of the 4 homegrown, you need another 4 Scots. So you're thinking about that being the likes of King, Lowry, Devine, McCrory. That's your 4 kind of homegrown ones. So that's another reason why I think we'll go out and try and keep him. I also think he's more than good enough to be very least our second choice. So quite happy with that potentially happening. I think John McLaughlin, if you go back to what I said last year, Derek, which was that around about November, I think it was after the Hibs semi-final, I said that Al McGregor was done and it was time for us to kind of move on. And I was very difficult to say because Al McGregor is obviously a legend. He's possibly the best, if not rivaling Andy Gorham for the best goalkeeper ever. I think that's entirely fair to say. But his time was done a long time ago. Now, after that semi-final, we saw a lot of mistakes. In Europe, he was very good because they play different games. They don't lob it in, and there's not the type of game like Scotland is. But in Scotland, you think about Ross County away, Motherwell at home and stuff. There was vital goals that we lost that were down to Alan McGregor. So I was calling for John McLaughlin to get a shot. John McLaughlin got a shot, and to be fair, he completely blew it out the water. I think that minus 3.7 that Jonny talks about probably all happened at Parkhead in that one game. So he had a bit of an absolute nightmare in that week. He didn't have a good performance in Amsterdam. He didn't have a good performance at Parkhead, and from that, Gio very quickly dumped him, and we haven't really seen him since. But if you think about what Michael Beale said since he came in, he spoke about being comfortable and being able to rotate. That happened right up until Rugby Park. He's seen John McLaughlin at Rugby Park, and he's basically not been in since. So that kind of rotation that you might have expected has stopped. So I think the whole situation with the goalkeepers would have changed. I'm quite happy for Robbie to be bumped up, and I'm quite happy for Jack Butland to come in. As I said at the start, I think that's a really solid start to business, if that's the way we're going. And yes, look, it does come with a risk. There is a clanger in him as such, but there's a clanger in every goalkeeper. There was a clanger in Alan McGregor, even when he was thriving and young. Alan McGregor was prone to throwing a goal or two in. So, and that's not a criticism. It's just goalkeeping is such a position where it could happen. But I would imagine that being in goals for Rangers is a bit more different to being in goals for Stoke, for example. So he'll have a lot less to do up here. And I think that being a regular number one and that confidence in him could hopefully progress him on again. So as far as I'm concerned, it's a good start. It's a smart start to business for Rangers.
Yeah, and just talking about Stoke, the good old football saying, he says, at least Butland can perform on a cold Tuesday night in Stoke, so I would have no qualms about him coming up here and doing the business. And talking about clangers, we see Ederson and Allison throwing a few in as well. Seen David De Gea recently. Lloris, of course, was had a bit of a shocker at St James's Park at the weekend as well. So even the top goalkeepers are prone to clangers. Let's get to a few comments. First of all, Kenny says, "Is that your Seneca certificate behind you, Derek, for your services to the follically challenged?" It is not. That's an interesting football story to that behind me, Kenny, is actually the Freedom of Texas gifted to Pele by the governor of Texas back in 1975. Pele was auctioning off all his belongings a few years ago. So I was the winner of that said frame. So it's not anything to do with Seneca here restoration. Sander Staff says, I miss Foderingham. Of course, Big Wes doing the business down at Sheffield United. They will be playing Premier League football next season down south as well. Brilliant to see him doing the business for the Blades. Stevie was shaking his head there. His time was obviously coming past at Ibrox. But were you a big fan of Wes, Stevie?
I would love to see what Wes Fodringham's save percentage was for shots outside the box and stuff.
That was his kryptonite, wasn't it?
He was adequate for what we needed at the time, but I know Xander's being obtuse and having a laugh there, but he was pretty grim, so absolutely not for me.
Yeah, I was a big Wes fan, I've got to say. He did a job at the time for Rangers, and I'll always... he'll always be fondly remembered by me. But yeah, great to see him.
Has he given you an interview or something, Derek?
It gave me an idea, actually. I need to reach out and ask him, actually. But yeah, good to see a lot of Rangers influence down there at the Blades just now. Of course, Stuart McCall is part of the backroom staff, and John Fleck, of course, there as well. Johnny, you want to...
Yeah, on Wes Foderingham, right? I just think it shows you how good Al McGregor is, that we see him as on a completely different level to a guy that will be a Premier League goalkeeper and is well respected and well thought of down there in the Championship. McGregor is just such a titanic figure in terms of the last few years. It's just a shame that he's kind of hung around, I think, a season too long. Could have left at the end of last year with the plaudits ringing in his ears at the end of that Scottish Cup final where he got that moment, which is, I suppose it is kind of Al McGregor-y, isn't it? That he would get that last 2 minutes and then go, "What? I'm staying. What?" But unfortunately, it just hasn't worked out, and I think it is time to go and get a new keeper. Hopefully, Butland can be the answer.
Yeah, absolutely. Other players that have been rumoured that Rangers are interested in, David Blythe, and there is a few comments about this guy. Derek, any news on the Dowall guy? Never heard of him, but I don't like the amount that we're signing from that league. It's Kieran Dowall. He plays for Norwich City. Played a few times under David Wagner, but not much. I believe he's out of contract in the summer. Rangers have been linked with him. He's another player I have watched quite extensively when he was at Wigan, and I've got to say I was impressed every time I seen him up there at the DW. Got his move to Norwich City. I haven't watched much of him since. Stevie, do you know much about Kieran Dowall?
Right-sided forward, left-footed, I think is about all I know, really. I think, though, we've got to be realistic in that Michael Beale, we've got to be smart this summer, again, to repeat what I've said before, which means that Michael Beale will stick to what he knows and he'll go for what he thinks are non-low-risk kind of signings. And I think, when you look at his background, Michael Beale, and the players that he's identified here, don't forget that Michael Beale was solely behind Calvin Bassey's signature. He was heavily influencing the deal for Joe Aribo as well. So Michael Beale knows players. These players, we can argue about the quality of guys that they brought in under Gerrard, but the actual signings under Steven Gerrard and Michael Beale before were a really high success rate. And sure, there was a Grezda here and there thrown in that didn't quite make it, but these guys, Aribo and Calvin Bassey made the club £35 million. So I think you've got to have a degree of trust in what Michael Beale's doing. And Derek, again, it goes back to what I've said, and I really hope that people bear this in mind, that our turnover in this summer is going to be massive. Rangers fans have called for a revolution. They've called for a rebuild. They're going to get it. So these numbers are going to happen. I can quite happily say that. So Michael Beale might be pragmatic and saying he wants 4 or 5 in. I would not be surprised. In fact, you can bookmark this and go and check it in a couple of months. I'll not be surprised if the incomings are more than twice that. So I'm very confident of that. And in doing that, Derek, there's going to be a few guys like this who they're going to go and pick up on Bosmans, going to pick up on free transfers, and they're going to go with, it's not a degree of risk, but they're going to give these boys an opportunity to go and flourish. You look at Todd Cantwell, it's more or less the exact same situation. So I've got a lot of trust in what Michael Beale's doing. It's led by him, which is what I wanted as soon as he came in. So he'll live and die by that. But I think that he's smart enough and he's got enough experience coaching-wise that he knows a player when he sees one. So I'm quite happy to trust him with this. I don't know a lot about him. I can't sit here and say that I know a lot. There's a possibility, actually. I have actually seen him when I've been watching Norwich, but I didn't watch Norwich a lot, Derek. As you know, I've seen him a few times when I was watching Billy, etc. But he's not a player that I know a lot about, I must admit. Myself and Adam Thornton had a bit of a discussion about it this morning, and Adam was basically filling me in. So I don't remember him as such. But again, it goes back to trust in Michael Beale and having to do. We can't sign 10 players in the summer for £3 million. It might be that we get 3 or 4 players that are £3 million players, and then there's others kind of based about it. And Jack Butland, this boy Kieran Dowall, it makes sense to me.
Yeah, on Dowall, he has been injured since February. They are hoping he'll be back at the end.
Is that a knee injury?
He has got a knee injury, yeah.
Right.
So.
Well, that's a stick on then. It's almost guaranteed that we'll be signing him if he's got a knee injury.
Yeah, he certainly ticks the box. So get him in. But listen, the time he was on loan at Wigan from Everton, and I was impressed every time I watched him. I know it was a few seasons ago now, but I think that would be good business if Rangers were to bring him in, especially for no transfer fee as well. But like you said, you can understand fans' angst with injury records and what have you, given what we've witnessed in recent seasons. Let's get to a few of the comments that are coming. An interesting one here from Ian Campbell. Jonny, I'll put to you, this is another area of the pitch that Rangers need to strengthen for me. I think on our Q&A on the website this morning, folks, I say that Rangers need at least 4 forwards, 2 strikers and 2 forward-thinking players. Ian Campbell says, do you guys think we'll keep Čolak? Do you keep Čolak around, Jonny?
No, I don't think so. Čolak was given a really, really big opportunity, and he looked like he was going to take it with that performance against Hibs. I thought he was outstanding that night, Easter Road, and then he fell off a cliff again. I think he's very mercurial. He pops up in certain games. If I was a manager, I would look at Antonio Čolak and just think, is this a guy that you can stake your career on and you feel confident that he's going to turn up and perform. I think he's a very, very good finisher, but he's quite slow. My impression is that Michael Beale is looking for players who are able to come short and run in behind to give the team both options. And Antonio Cholak is quite limited in that regard. Now, if he's kept on, I can understand why from the point of view of, for certain games, for certain moments, if you can get the service to Antonio Cholak, then there's no doubt that he's a player. But I think he's a player that will have people in the market who are interested in sniffing around him. He's performed in Croatia. He's performed in it's the Scandinavian leagues in Denmark. So you've got a guy there that has a tangible track record. So I don't think it's impossible that Rangers could get money back for Antonio Cholak, and then you can get him off the wage bill. I've not heard anything that Rangers are looking to sell this player, so this is not knowledge based. It's just my impression of his performances and where Michael Beale seems to be taking the team.
Would you agree with that, Stevie? I like Cholak. I've got to say, I think he's good. He has his use against teams that play that low block. He's a good finisher, as Jonny said. I would quite like to keep him. In all honesty, I don't think Kemar Roofe we can't rely on. Of course, Alfredo Morelos looks like he's heading out the door. I would keep him unless a tempting offer comes in for him. What's your take on that?
I'm very much where Jonny is. I think that he's one of the ones that you could sell. We are going to have to do a wee bit of business in bringing players, out of the club that have got a value. So you're looking at like Kamara and things like that. But I think Antonio Cholak has been a degree of success under Van Bronckhorst because he very much played to his strengths. Michael Beale doesn't play to his strength. He wants a lot more than what he's maybe able to give. He wants runners. If you look at Alfredo Morelos' positioning, where he's pulling off on the fullbacks and playing a lot of it out wide, I don't think Antonio Cholak can do that. But he's probably, arguably, the best finisher at the club. When you look at him and Kemar Roofe as being the ones that you would want, see if Antonio Cholak goes through on goal like Fashion Sakala did on Sunday, I would be confident that 99% of the time he would stick that away. So it's a difficult one, but like Jonny says, there's a market there. There's a buyer's market for Antonio Cholak, so it would not surprise me in the slightest if you see £2 or £3 million coming in for him and him moving on. So it's one of these ones where I would probably put it in the position of Derek. I don't think he's a priority exit, but he's a sellable asset, which might be why we do business.
I think Rangers have got 4 untouchables. Goldson, Tavernier, Cantwell and Raskin. They're staying. I think everyone else will depend on if there's interest, if there's offers.
Yeah.
Even, a player like Leon King, for example, you'd say, look, played more minutes than anyone else in the Champions League under a certain age. I think under the age of 20, Leon King was the most used player. He's a guy that there's been a lot of speculation around, moves from down south, from teams who are looking to bring in young talent. We know that Brexit has really, really disrupted how Premier League teams recruit and has made them much more focused on Scotland, Northern Ireland and Wales. So with that in mind, does Leon King have a really, really strong market value? Could you turn him into £3 million? Well, if you could, I think there's a strong argument to say he doesn't really look like he's going to be Michael Beale's cup of tea at this point. Perhaps that is the kind of transfer where Rangers can generate cash that you're not expecting. I'm actually I don't know what Stevie thinks about this. Looking at the squads, I feel kind of quite in a good place for where Rangers can sell players to bring money in. A lot of people have been saying, well, who's the assets? Who do you sell? I think there's actually quite a lot of options. If you want to actually generate some money, I don't think any of them are going to be bringing in Bassi money, that's clear, and even Joe Aribo money. But if you're prepared to say, no, we're calling time on this Rangers career, there's talent there, but we're calling time on it, I think there's a lot of players there that could be generating cash for the club.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think when you look at you want to chuck a few names in that you could potentially get money for. You would potentially get money for Glenn Kamara, Yanis Hadji. You would potentially get money for Antonio Cholak, even Ben Davis, Ridvan Yilmaz. There is money there to be raised, Derek, and all of those players that are mentioned, I wouldn't be surprised if they went. I'm with Jonny. I think that those 4 that mentioned, I think are kind of untouchable unless there's a huge bid for one of them. I would also add John Lundstrom to that, mainly just in case he's watching.
Yeah. Be careful, you, by the way.
So aside of that, really, I'm with Jonny on that. So I do think this is where it kind of goes back to what I was saying, Derek, and it's not mean to kind of be repetitive, but I just think with so much business needing done this summer, I think there's going to be a lot of kind of wheeling and dealing, as we put it. So the squad that we've got now is going to be completely different to the squad that we've got come the end of the summer transfer window. So a couple of days ago, I would have told you I was quite worried about the potential of what we're going to do in the summer. I'm not worried now. So I'm actually excited about the turnover and where we're going to go with it. So guys like Butland and things, for me, are good business, and I'm looking forward to seeing where we go. And as Jonny says, I think we do have... I think that the thing is, when people talk about it, we get a wee bit hysterical and saying, there's nobody that can go for 8, 9, 10 million. But if you've got 4 or 5 that can go for 3 or 4, then you're already facilitating a transfer window with maybe 10, 12 million pounds coming in, which if you're putting out 10 and possibly spending that as well, gives you quite a bit of room there to get a few. So this is why I say that I think there'll be 4 or 5 that will come in that are free and potentially smarter business. And then I think we'll also sign 4 or 5 that are around 2 to 3 million pounds worth that Michael Beale will consider to be the levels of Raskin, etc., where he probably would have spent that kind of money on him if it was available in the summer before. So that's how I think the summer is going to go. And I think, like Jonny, that you could see guys like Hadji, Kamara, even Ridvan Yilmaz, Ben Davis getting moved out because their potential money coming in. So a lot to be done this summer, Derek, and I'm looking forward to that happening.
Just on the transfers, boys, and sorry, Derek, I'm taking over your job here.
No,
I'm interested in both your opinions on this. You mentioned, Stevie, the situation around homegrown players, both coming through the academy where you have to have 4, and also players that have been brought through in Scotland. Do you see anyone, Stevie, that Rangers could go and get to help bolster that in terms of the SPFL that would be obvious targets or sensible targets? Or is it just a case of extending those that are already there, the likes of Ryan Jack, maybe even Scott Arfield's? I'd have to have a look at the data to see who's available and who fits out and who fills out that situation. Or would it be going to maybe someone down south? People are mentioning John Fleck in the comments, who's available on a free transfer, I think, come the end of the season. What's your take on that?
What about Ross Stewart? He's homegrown. He's been linked before. He's well, he's out of contract in the summer as well, Derek. So
didn't realise that.
He's somebody we've been linked with before. I think there could be a degree of truth that there's an interest in him. Whether or not
100% there was an interest previously.
Yeah. So whether or not that's still there now, he wouldn't surprise me if you're asking me, Jonny, if there's anybody been linked that you would think would be homegrown that we could go and get. A lot of people have mentioned Lyndon Dykes because he's a Scotland international. He's not homegrown. Yeah. He was born in Australia, and you have to be to be homegrown. For example, you have to have played between 16 to 21 for 3 solid seasons. So people often mention get Billy Gilmore back on loan. Billy's not homegrown either because he's homegrown now in England because he was Chelsea for 16 to that period. So he wouldn't count, even though he's a Scotland international. Scott Arfield is a Canadian international, but grew up and was brought through at Falkirk, so would count. So people need to kind of remember that. Jonny, without upsetting everyone, I wouldn't be the slightest bit surprised if Scott Arfield got another year. So we need to wait and see how that situation goes. But it's definitely one that can possibly happen. Who else would I look at? The young fullback at Motherwell, Alan Johnston's son. Is it really playing well? I can't remember. Is it Max Johnston? I can't remember.
Yeah, Max Johnston. Yeah,
he is a really talented fullback, but obviously we've got Tav, so he would be the kind of one that I would be looking at with a Scottish contingent as well, and thinking that this boy's got a real potential future. So there's a couple of them, but I don't think there's many, and I don't want to be rude or kind of rule out guys. I just don't have a lot of knowledge about boys that are out there. When you think of the likes of the boys that are maybe the Lewis Fergusons and stuff that we didn't go for in the first place, is there many that are really that level that are kind of standing out at the moment? I'm not sure. So would I be surprised with going with somebody like Ross Stewart, somebody like Max Johnston and stuff? No, I wouldn't be entirely against that. And again, these boys are out of contract, so that might make sense for us. But I don't, in answer to your question, Johnny, with regards to real Scottish talent that's out there we could go and get that's feasible, short of 50 million for Scott McTominay, I'm not sure there's anybody really kicking about.
I think the club should be looking at Kevin Nesbitt.
Well, he's got a year left, and if you offered me the possibility of getting him, then yes, I would be absolutely up for it. I'm not sure that's possible. Given would he come here? I'm not so sure. I'm not sure that he is a Rangers fan grown up or anything, so I don't think there's any connection with the club there. Would he come here? I'm not entirely sure. Would I take him? Absolutely. That boy can finish, and he's different. He can run beyond. He's good two-footed. He's fairly decent in the air. I don't think he's prolific, but I'm not sure Hibs play that way where they swing it into him all the time anyway. But he's always done well against us. He plays right on the edges. If you remember, he scored a very smart goal in his return at Ibrox, Michael Beale's first game back. So he's a definite player that I do like. We were interested at him before. We watched him at Dunfermline quite a bit under Gerrard and Beale as well. So it'll be interesting. That's a good shout, actually. But that comes to what I'm saying as well. It's not an ignorance thing. Perhaps it is, but I'm not too aware of guys like that kicking about. But Kevin Nisbet's a fair shout, Derek, I would say, definitely.
Yeah, interesting. We'll get to another couple of comments before we wrap up for the show for today. First of all, this comment from Melbourne. Morning, lads from Melbourne. Anzac Day here. Maybe remember them. Absolutely keen to get next season started already. Just get the job done. So he's looking forward to next season. Liz Dempster also gets in touch. Just when you're talking about Ridvan there, Stevie, he's someone obviously we haven't seen much of this season. Injury is a serious hamstring injury. So game time limited, but he's been fit and available for some weeks now. And Borna still getting the nod. Liz Dempster said, a lot I would sell, but definitely not Borna. Would he be another one you'd be inclined to keep, Stevie? If the jury is very much still out on Ridvan Yilmaz, and if he is the future of Rangers. I thought we would have seen more of him by now, but with that in mind, would you be inclined to keep Borna Barisic around?
Said last week I would keep Borna around, Derek. You remember we were talking about it and thought that he would be, fine for an extension, but I think there's a possibility that Borna Barisic might want out as well. When you consider that his wife's just had a family, they're now back in Croatia. I think that there's a reasonable point to be made that Borna Barisic has been here, 5 years, might consider his time up as well. So a lot depends on what he might want to do. Would I keep Borna around? I think there's a fair shout to him being our best player of the year, like Ian says. I think that's fair. Yeah. It would depend on what he wants to do. But regardless of that, I would be bringing in another left back to really push him and really get him kind of more or less. I'm not saying that I would replace him straight away, but would be looking to overtake Borna Barisic quite quickly. So I'll put myself on the spot. I don't think Ridvan's got a future at Rangers at all. I think that come the summer, he's one that we'll look to cash in on. So unless there's a dramatic turnaround and he starts to get game time, I don't think you'll you'll see his stock still high back in Turkey, and I think they'll kind of turn around that quite quickly. So I think that situation with Borna is quite fluent, Derek, and it might depend on exactly what he's going to do. I wouldn't be surprised if left back's another area where you see a couple come in.
Yeah, with Borna, I don't know how much money you're going to recoup if you look to sell him on this summer. He'd be one that wouldn't have too many qualms about running down his contract and having him for another year before letting him move on. You're nodding, Jonny. Would you agree with that?
I totally agree with that, Derek. Borna was brought in for, I think, 1.75 million. A really good acquisition, a good deal by Mark Allen, who I think now we're looking at it in the cold light of day. Mark Allen's transfer dealings were significantly better than Ross Wilson's. Well, I think Ross Wilson, perhaps behind the scenes, was more transformative. Mark Allen in the transfer market, I think, was different gravy. Borna, I don't think has major value. So if you're going to go into the market and try to punt him on, I think you'd be talking about 1.5 million.
Yeah, not much
max. So keeping him around to me just seems like a sensible move. It's not like the situation with Ryan Kent or Alfredo Morelos, where if you'd sold them last summer, or if you'd been able to sell them last summer, which is more accurate because no one made any offers, then there was still opportunity to bring in big money. In terms of Borna, I don't think that's there. So I think the club should be quite, to use the old parlance, relaxed about that potentially happening. And as Stevie says, listen, I've been on the Ridvan train for a while in terms of saying, look, really exciting player. If you look what he did at Turkey, offers a completely different option from left back. I think Josh has been quite vocal about seeing what he can bring to the table. But do you know what? I really trust Michael Beale when it comes to players. Very good coach. And I think it's really, really telling that Michael Beale hasn't brought in Ridvan before now. He's been fit for quite a long time now, and Borna is still absolutely the number one choice there.
Yeah.
That's telling you something. That's telling you something quite profound. I think the same with Yanis Hadji. You know, I think we all felt that Yanis Hadji was going to come in and be a major part of Michael Beale's change and his revolution almost. And Yanis Hadji just really hasn't had a sniff. The odd substitute appearance here or there. Yanis has been fit since the end of January.
Yeah,
we're now in the end of April, and really he's not been involved. I think that's telling as well.
Yeah.
So I think there's going to be quite a few transfers with going out of Ibrox that fans will be saying, "Oh, well, I'm a little bit disappointed to see him leave. He had a bit of talent about him." But I think Michael Beale, and I wrote this yesterday in my piece, he needs to be absolutely ruthless. One of the things that I always think of when I look back to Graham Souness's era was how ruthless he was when players came in, didn't quite cut the mustard. They were out on their backside so quickly. He just made the decision on them. No, this isn't going to work. Out you go. And I think this summer, there isn't really time to be going back to players who have kind of slowly settled into life at Ibrox. I think Michael Beale needs to go in and make sure he's got players in there who can hit the ground running next season. Because, listen, we've all said this. This is not new. I'm sure Stevie will agree. I know you'll agree, Derek. If this goes north, goes south, so north is a different option entirely. If this goes south on Sunday, Michael Beale's going to be under enormous pressure the minute next season starts. Because there'll be a lot of fans out there who think he perhaps isn't the right man for the job. Now, I disagree with that. I think Michael Beale's shown enough.
Yeah.
Had a very good start to life as Rangers manager. But the realpolitik is you can't be a Rangers manager that can't beat Celtic. So going into that first Old Firm game, if he's coming into that on the back of a run of defeats, it's going to be very, very significant pressure. He needs to have people around him that he knows can perform in these games, he knows can do a tactical job. And those players that haven't been able to do that, those players that haven't shown it, he just needs to cut them loose.
There's only one thing that will stop that happening, Jonny. Only one thing that will stop people losing all complete faith in Michael Beale, and there's another reason why I think it will happen, is that if this happens and it goes south or north or east or west, whatever you want to call it, Johnny, and all of a sudden, we do lose and it's a poor end to the season and what happens Sunday happens. If he sticks with that squad and that team, I think a lot of people will be very much against it come start the season and perhaps looking for an opportunity to voice displeasure at it. If it does happen that time equally and he bins a squad, which I think he'll do regardless, by the way, regardless of what happens on Sunday, just like at Pittodrie, Derek, I said to you last week, it wouldn't teach us anything we didn't know. It didn't.
Yeah.
I think that come the summer, he will bin them anyway, and that'll give him a degree of leeway, regardless of how the end of the season comes. I think a lot of people will then be able to say, well, he didn't maybe do well that 6 months in the bigger game at the end of the season, whatever you want to call it, but he knew the changes that has to be made, and I think that would give him a grace period. If it goes wrong and he doesn't do that and he sticks with his squad, then they will most likely cost him the way that it cost Giovanni van Bronckhorst. But I think Michael Beale is smarter than that, and I think he knows full well what's needed. And I think, and again, I will state this and people can come back to it, I really do think that will happen now. I'm 100% convinced that we will get the turnover and we will get the revamp, rebuild, whatever you want to call it, that we've called for a long time.
Yeah, good point made, Stevie. Right, folks, that'll do us there. Lots of issues being discussed this morning. Another bumper episode. There was a comment that came in from Drinks Whiskey when the split fixtures released. We're led to believe it should be at some point later today. Apparently, the Rangers Celtic game will take place the weekend of the 13th and 14th, if I'm not mistaken. So the second round of fixtures. But as soon as we hear from the governing body, folks, we'll let you know on our social media accounts and on the website as well about the dates of those last 5 fixtures of the league season. Big thanks to Jonny and to Stevie. I won't be back tomorrow. I'm off, but Joshua will be back tomorrow alongside Jonny. So hopefully you can join them for that. Until then, enjoy the rest of your Tuesday. Bye for now.